It was a Wednesday morning, the kind where the air feels crisp and the world seems to pause for a moment. I was on my porch, sipping coffee, the steam curling up from the mug as I watched the neighborhood wake up. The street was quiet, just the hum of distant lawnmowers and the occasional chirp of a sparrow. Then came the crunch of boots on gravel, sharp and deliberate, cutting through the calm like a knife. I squinted, thinking it might be road work again, but no. There she was, Linda, the HOA president, striding toward my house like she was leading a military operation. Mirrored sunglasses glinted in the sun, her clipboard clutched like a badge of honor. Behind her trailed two HOA board members, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else, and a guy in a neon orange vest gripping bolt cutters that screamed overkill for any neighborhood dispute. I knew right then this wasn't about a friendly chat. They were coming for my ammo locker, me federally registered, military-grade, bolted-down ammo locker, wired to send an instant alert to the Department of Defense if anyone so much as sneezed on it. I stood up, coffee forgotten, as Linda's crew stopped at the edge of my lawn. Her voice rang out, smug and rehearsed, like she'd practiced this in front of a mirror. "Mr. Carter, this metal box VY OLATS, HOA code 4.12C for unsightly structures VY Cybel from the street. You were warned. We're taking it down today." The way she said it, you'd think she had the law, the governor, and God himself on speed dial. I try to keep it CIVYL. "Linda, this isn't just some storage shed. It's a secure container under federal oversight, tied to my defense contractor clearance. Touch it, and you'll trigger an alert straight to the Pentagon." I pointed to the warning label, clear as day. Saw federal asset. Unauthorized access prohibited. Saw but Linda just smirked like I'd told her I was secretly a superhero. "We'll see about that," she said, nodding to the bolt cutter guy. He stepped forward, his tool clamping down on the lock with a sickening clank. A red light blinked on the locker's panel, and I knew a signal was already racing across servers, pinging some office in Virginia. Somewhere, engines were starting and boots were hitting the ground. Linda didn't notice. She turned to her posse, beaming like she'd just won a courtroom drama. "See? Nothing's happening. He's probably storing old camping gear in there." One of her board members chuckled, and I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. I didn't need to say, "I told you so." The universe was about to do it for me. 15 minutes later, the street erupted. Two black SUVs roared in. No plates, no logos, just pure menace on wheels. They screeched to a halt, kicking up dust, and four men in tactical gear, spilled out earpieces, rifles, the whole deal. "Perimeter check. Secure the site," barked a lieutenant, his voice slicing through the morning air. Linda's clipboard hit the grass. Her mouth fell open, and for once, she didn't have a snappy comeback. She stammered, "Hi, I'm the HOA president. We were just—" But the officer cut her off with a raised hand. "Ma'am, step away from the structure. This is a protected asset under federal law. You just committed a breach." Her face went white as the officers swarmed the locker, pulling out tablets to log the alert. Photos were snapped, surveillance footage re-VYEU'd. "One attempted breach," the lieutenant read aloud. "Images transmitted to an unsecured cloud server. That's a violation." Linda tried to pin it on the bolt cutter guy, babbling, "I didn't touch it." He did, but the officer wasn't buying it. "Ma'am, your face is on the footage." Of course it was. I'd install my own cameras, layered and looping, because I knew Linda's type would pull something like this eventually. They didn't cuff her not yet, but they escorted her and her buddy to the sidewalk, running their IDs through a radio check. The lieutenant turned to me, his expression softening just a fraction. "You did right by not escalating this yourself. This is why the system's in place." I nodded, then asked the question burning in my mind. "What happens now?" He glanced at Linda, who was sweating through her blazer. "We find out who gave her the green light to play VY Gillanti. If she doesn't have clearance, this goes way above local cops." By noon, the SUVs were gone, and Linda was left standing there, staring at the locker like it had personally betrayed her. But she wasn't done. Oh no, people like Linda don't quit, they double down. That evening, I caught her snapping selfies by the locker, grinning like a cat burglar. What she didn't know was her phone was synced to the HOA's cloud, and every photo, geotagged and time-stamped, was uploading straight to an unsecured server. Those selfies weren't just EVY density, were a digital landmine, linking her to a federal breach. The next morning, an encrypted email landed in my inbox from a military liaison. It confirmed the breach protocols had kicked in and requested I save all my footage for potential court use. Attached was a document stating the HOA had zero jurisdiction over my locker. I grinned, the kind of grin you get when karma hands you a front row seat. But Linda? She was still out there, clipboard in hand, acting like she could talk her way out of this. She even showed up at my door, all fake smiles, saying, "Let's move past this, Tom. Maybe hide the locker behind a fence, for the kids." I looked her dead in the eye. "The only thing getting moved is your HOA badge. Probably to an EVY Denke locker." She huffed off, but the neighborhood was buzzing. People were whispering, avoiding eye contact, or sneaking glances at my driveway like the locker might sprout legs and march away. Linda, desperate to save face, started a smear campaign. Flyers appeared on doorsteps, calling for an emergency safety meeting to address the threat in our midst. She even slapped a stock photo of a rusty grenade on the flyer, as if I was hiding bombs next to the mailbox. I showed up to the meeting, not because I wanted to, but because letting Linda control the narrative was like letting a fox guard the henhouse. The community center was packed, every chair creaking as people turned to stare. Linda stood at the front, flanked by her treasurer, Mike, who looked like he'd rather be at a root canal. She launched into her speech, voice dripping with fake concern. A dangerous situation has unfolded, involved VYing unauthorized military materials stored on private property. For our children's safety, we must act. Someone in the back muttered, "Weren't you the one with the bolt cutters?" And the room tittered. Linda ignored it, clicking to a blurry slide of the SUVs in my driveway. This is what our neighborhood has becoming a place where unmarked vehicles show up because of secrets next to our homes. That's when I stood up. The room went silent. "For the record," I said, holding up a letter from the Department of Defense, "those vehicles came because Linda broke federal protocol by trying to crack open a secured locker. They weren't here for me. They were here for her." She tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "This letter says the locker's under military oversight. Maplewood Estates doesn't get to vote on federal law." I passed the letter around, and the murmurs grew louder. Mike chimed in weakly, "This isn't a military base, Tom." I turned to the crowd. "No, it's not. But it's also not above the law. You deserve safety, and I kept this quiet to protect that until Linda made it a problem." The meeting ended in chaos, but Linda wasn't done. She filed a report with Homeland Security, painting me as some rogue arms dealer. The next day, 2 agents in suits showed up, polite but all business. I walked them to the garage, showed them the locker, and played the footage of Linda's antics. They didn't care about weapons, they already knew what was inside. Classified files from my DoD contracts. What they wanted to know was how Linda's photos ended up on the HOA's cloud, triggering a security scan. I explained and they exchanged a look. If those images hit an open server, one said, "That's a national security violation." Linda's next move was her dumbest yet. At 5 a.m., I woke to the growl of a diesel engine. Outside, a flatbed truck and a bulldozer sat on my lawn, Linda in her robe barking orders to her cousin, an unlicensed contractor named Joe. They were going to rip the locker out by force. I stormed outside, shouting, "Have you lost your mind?" She smirked. "This is HOA land now. The board voted it hazardous. We're Remo VYing it." Before I could respond, a cop's voice cut through the air. "Stop the vehicle. Step away." 2 patrol cars had pulled up, silent as ghosts. Behind them, a military vehicle from the nearby base. The officers inspected the locker, confirmed its status, and turned to Linda. "Attempting to damage a federal asset is a felony under Title 50, one said. Joe, sweating bullets, asked if that meant jail. Linda tried to throw him under the bus, but the email she'd sent turned over by a board member showed she'd planned it all. The fallout was swift. Neighbors watched from their porches as Linda's cousin was detained, his truck impounded. The community center was locked down, federal agents seizing HOA records. Linda had been hacking into property registries, searching safety databases under false pretenses. The board collapsed, members resigning one by one. Linda was ousted, her protest drowned out by a list of statutes she'd violated, handed to her by a fed-up board member. But Linda still didn't quit. She hired a fake compliance agency to send me violation letters, sent drones to snoop around my yard, even hired goons to move the locker. Each time, I shut her down with footage, calls to the feds, and a growing file of denke. Then a board member, Lucas, showed up at my door, pale and shaking. "She told us you had explosives," he said, handing me emails where Linda plotted to bankrupt me, calling my locker a toy war box. I forwarded it all to the military's legal team. The feds offered me a consulting gig to prevent future Lindas from causing chaos. The neighborhood elected a new HOA board, one that scrapped her petty rules. Linda's trial was quiet but brutal. Guilty on multiple counts, fined, monitored, and banned from any leadership role for 15 years. One day, I found a note in my mailbox, and signed but in her handwriting, "You were right." I lost everything. I kept it, not for pity, but as a reminder of what unchecked power does. The locker stayed, untouched, a symbol of every line Linda crossed. I added a sign. "Saw stand here if you've read the Constitution." Saw kids laughed, neighbors joked, but everyone knew what it meant. Peace returned, hard-won and fragile, the kind that comes when bullies lose and justice wins. So what do you think? Was Linda just a control freak who got in over her head? Or did she deserve every bit of the fallout? Should HOAs have any power over private property, or are they just breeding grounds for petty tyrants? And what would you have done if your woman fought back, or let it slide? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button if you're Team Locker, and subscribe for more stories where the little guy fights the system and wins. Let's get this debate going.